your AFC North champion Baltimore Ravens. Whoa, that would be crazy.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to the USA Today Sports NFL Vodcast. As always, I am your party host, Joe Rivera, and along with me, one of the preeminent ball knowers of USA Today Sports, and that's Chris Boom Baca Boom. Week 10 almost in the books. Got one more Monday Night Football game to get through between the Eagles and the Packers, but otherwise, a pretty, run-of-the-mill, uneventful weekend. Had an international game. What was your favorite moment from Week 10?
I thought it was a fantastic Sunday, Joe. But the moment that probably got the heartiest chuckle out of me was in the third quarter of the Detroit Lions Washington Commanders game. Fox brings in President Donald Trump, and after some babbling for a few minutes, Trump tries his hand at play-by-play. I think it was like a 4-yard run, and he just does his best Tony Romo impression, except instead of a deep pass down the field, it was something just in the red zone, and he's like, whoa! And that was the highlight for me.
Well, here we go, Jim, right? Deron Payne punches Amon-Ra St. Brown in the face. You got international game where Daniel Jones continues his regression into a pumpkin. But, what do you say putting Sunday behind us, Boom? We got tush push revenge game of sorts tonight on Monday Night Football. Packers were the team that introduced the rule change to try and ban the tush push, and they face off against the Eagles tonight in Green Bay. What do you think? Who you got?
Eagles off a bye feels a little too easy for me in the prediction market, so give me the Pack. This is a hinge game for Green Bay, in my opinion. I wrote this in our 4th and Monday newsletter, which you should all be subscribing to, and I mean that in the sense of Packers come in and win, they kind of like cement themselves as in that top tier of NFC contenders, if you want to call it like a group of 5 right now. If they lose, it's kind of like, all right, here's a third straight year of a 7 seed, and we'll see what you do in January, but it probably won't be much if you get there at all. So I think that's why this is like a tremendous game for Matt LaFleur and the Packers.
Yeah, it's a huge spot, Boom, and it's going to be tough for the offense without Tucker Kraft out for the year with the ACL injury. They still have weapons, right? Josh Jacobs and the wide receiver core. I mean, they're still loaded. They're still loaded on offense. It's just it's time to poop or get off the pot if you're the Packers, right? Like we said it week 1, where was everybody too quick to crown the Packers this season, and this is the game. This is the game to either prove that point or not. So we'll see how it goes. I just don't know. I mean, the Eagles seem to be turning it around offensively, getting A.J. Brown more involved. It's like they rediscovered fire, right? Like, it's like, oh, man, we can throw to this guy again, But we'll see. Coming off a bye, Green Bay, tough opponent. Micah Parsons, familiar with the Eagles. We'll see what happens on Monday Night Football.
2 hot and cold teams, so we'll see which versions of them we get.
Speaking of hot and cold, Boom, I want to get into a little segment here. I'm going to call it quarterback musical chairs, QB musical chairs. Now, a lot of these guys probably aren't going anywhere given their contracts, but as we know, the NFL can be relatively unpredictable, especially with the quarterback position, right? So some of these guys have been pretty good, some of them not as good. Moving into the 2026 season, will they find new spots? Trevor Lawrence, he's a guy that Liam Cohen was supposed to unlock him, right? And you're heading into week 11 and still hasn't hit double digits touchdown passes yet. He hasn't quite figured out the offense. What do you think, Trevor Lawrence, moving forward? You think he's sticking around in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I mean, I put Trevor in this whole category of guys who could potentially be on the move in the offseason for a variety of circumstances. And the interesting factor is that they kind of all have long-term big money deals. You got Kyler Murray in there with the Arizona Cardinals, Tua Tagovailoa with the Miami Dolphins. I'll even throw Geno Smith with the Raiders in there. Talked about Geno a bunch last week and how that signing has not really worked out for them. So, I mean, I just see a situation this offseason where new regime in Miami, maybe it's best to start fresh without Tua. So now you have an opening there. Kyler's time in Arizona is clearly over. That went from a soft benching to just a straight up benching with him going on IR. And then, as you mentioned, Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen, it doesn't seem like they're on the same page at all. Like, I don't know if Liam Cohen can necessarily do better than Trevor on the open market, but maybe there's a situation in which a guy comes in. So, maybe it's something like where you have Kyler going to Miami and then Tua goes up to Jacksonville, and then Trevor goes out to Arizona, something like that, musical chairs. I think in that scenario, Gino's kind of left out with when the music stops, right? At least as a starting quarterback in this league after this season. So, I mean, if we're looking at guys who sign big money deals but haven't lived up to that paycheck at all, really, like, I think why not start changing up scenarios and sceneries to try and maximize those investments, I guess.
Boom, I think that makes a lot of sense when you talk about it that way, right? Like the biggest question mark for me is Kyler Murray. Like whoever is assuming that Kyler's time is done in Arizona, right? Whoever is going to take on Kyler Murray moving forward, it's a massive gamble, right? Like he's a guy who's the number one overall pick, explosive athlete. He's a playmaker, but we've seen throughout his career uh, whether it was oh, man, his name is escaping me, but whether it was Cliff Kingsbury or whether it was Jonathan Gannon. Now he's a guy that just doesn't play in structure well, right? And whether that's his height or whether that's his just propensity to want to make plays outside the pocket, you just don't know what you're going to get with him week to week, right? So, Kyler Murray's the biggest question mark in this entire equation. He's the guy that I could see him end up in Las Vegas next year, potentially,
Sure.
if Gino's done, right? Like, he's a guy, to your point, I could see him end up in Miami if Mike McDaniel somehow gets through the season and he gets a nod for another season in Miami. I feel like he's a guy that makes a lot of sense for the Dolphins, but I at the same time, he's such a risk. He's such a risk as a quarterback moving forward. You still hope that there's talent and potential there, but I just don't know what team is going to look at that and say we can get the most juice out of the squeeze here.
Do you see Kyler as a guy who in a couple of years we'll be talking about, like we do right now, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, where he just needed time to figure it out, needed to get to that second, third location down the line in his career to start having success? Do you think we're having that conversation when it comes to Kyler?
I don't think so. Just because he's such a different quarterback from those guys, right? And we've known that since day one. Coming from Oklahoma, again, he's a guy that loves to make plays outside of the pocket. He plays a lot of schoolyard ball, sometimes to his detriment, right? Whereas guys like Sam Darnold, we saw he could be a pocket passer. A guy like Baker Mayfield, he's a pocket passer. He obviously can make plays with his legs and outside the pocket, but even Geno Smith, he's a guy who's a pure pocket passer coming from a spread offense. But we see those guys, they can play within structure. I think that's the biggest thing. What we haven't seen from Kyler is whether or not he can play within structure. And I think that's the biggest question mark. So again, I don't know if you're taking a flyer on Kyler Murray, he's a guy that you have to design the offense around, right? Like he's a guy that you can't he's not offensive coordinator agnostic where you can try and teach him. At least to this point, he hasn't proven that yet. So I'm curious to see who takes that risk on him next year, if he's not a Cardinal, that is. All right, boom. We're at the midway point of the 2025 NFL season, or just past it. And we're pretty judgmental guys, or at least I am, when it comes to players, when it comes to coaches. But there's a lot of first-year coaches out there in 2025 season. So let's give them a little report card, right? Let's grade how they've done so far to this point in the season. So I'm going to give you a list. You give me the grade, and we can have a little back and forth on it. So let's start up here in Chicago, the Windy City. And Ben Johnson, he was probably the hottest coaching candidate. The Bears get their guy. He apparently wanted that job. What's the grade you're giving Ben Johnson so far this season?
Yeah, I'm a pretty harsh grader based off of what I have written down here for this segment. So I do want to give Ben Johnson credit for coming home with the highest grade. He obviously does an awesome job, or has done an awesome job, I should say, through the first half plus of this season, and he gets an A- from me because he has Bears winning games in the fourth quarter. That's coaching to me, and B, those post-game speeches are becoming like a highlight of my Sunday every week. I don't know if everybody's seen those in the locker room, but they are some of the most intense sequences you can see within an NFL locker room. Great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Ben Johnson's done a hell of a job, man. Like, listen, there's still questions surrounding Caleb Williams, right? I really don't think anybody has a full picture on what Caleb is going to be yet. But to your point, I mean, you win games in the fourth quarter. He clearly has his guys fired up. And sometimes you feel like And I think this might be unfair, but you look at Brandon Staley some years back with the Chargers, and you feel like some of his stuff was kind of like manufactured for camera. Maybe he didn't have that natural charisma that a lot of NFL head coaches do. But you see Ben Johnson, and it feels authentic, right? Like it feels legitimate. Like these guys are buying into it. So to him, give him an A. I'm fine with giving him an A so far this season, right? Bears fans finally have something to look forward to. They've been a pretty exciting team when it comes to fourth quarter wins. I mean, knocking off the Giants in the fourth quarter. Who hasn't done that this season, right? But good for Ben Johnson, man. Finally, again, he's a guy who reportedly wanted that job. I think it was a perfect match given the quarterback situation there, and we'll see what they can move forward. But so far, he's probably been the most impressive of the first year guys.
The rise and fall of Brandon Staley was probably one of the more steep declines we saw in the NFL in like the last 5 years. Great name drop.
Yep, he just decided to go for it on fourth down again, in a situation that didn't make sense.
The whole thing.
It was this whole thing. So we'll see. We'll see. So sorry, Brandon Staley taking strays on a Monday morning, but
not even in this segment.
Nope, not even in the segment. All right, boom. Let's head down to the Bayou. Kellen Moore, another guy who had flirted with some head coaching jobs in recent years, finally ends up in New Orleans after a pretty extensive coaching search. Quarterback situation, we know, not perfect, but they end up with Tyler Shuck there after giving Spencer Rattler a try. What's the grade you're giving Kellen Moore so far at this point in the season?
Well, yeah, extended coaching search probably because they landed on him relatively early in the process, and he had to go win a Super Bowl with the Eagles. So as their offensive coordinator, so I think I gave Mr. Moore an incomplete as of right now. I think it's a little unfair to put a letter grade on him this early, just because of what he's had to deal with. That roster is like really, 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 really lacking talent. But hey, they go into Carolina on Sunday and get a win. Credit to them. That's a
feisty Cats. Your Panthers. Your Carolina Panthers.
We're going to talk about the Panthers in a little bit. I got something coming for the Panthers, but Kellen Moore's team deserves credit, and Kellen Moore deserves credit for having his guys ready to go.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair. So, I mean, what, you give him an incomplete? I guess I'd give him a B, a solid B. Like you said, I think navigating that quarterback situation wasn't ideal, right? Like landing on Tyler Shuck, he had plenty of favorable pre-draft hype. I think he ended up in the draft in the second round, right where I think most teams probably expected him. Is he a guy that's going to end up being a long-term viable NFL starter? Is he a franchise guy? I'm not sure anybody really knows that. I mean, it's still way too early to tell. Part of his story has been the injuries in his career, right? And you can't predict health, just like you can't predict injuries. But waiting this long to really pull the trigger on Tyler Shuck to see what he's got after giving Spencer Rattler a fair shake, I think he's done about as well as you probably could, given that there were always also all those trade rumors surrounding them. They end up moving on from Rashid Shaheed at the trade deadline. But he's done a pretty decent job, all things considered. So, sometimes you might be more than what your record says you are. Sorry, Bill Parcells, but incomplete, probably fair. B, probably fair. No arguments here. All right. We got to talk about Jacksonville for a second, Boom, because Liam Cohen's a guy that went in there, had a hot stint as Tampa Bay Bucks offensive coordinator. Duval, right? The whole thing. We know how awkward it was when he ended up there. We think he's going to turn this team around. He's looked pretty good now. A lot of that has been because of the Jacksonville defense, but Trevor Lawrence, not quite there yet. What do we think of the job Liam Cohen's done this year?
Yeah, maybe I was being a little too generous in my initial grading. I gave Cohen a B. Maybe I hadn't thought too hard about yesterday's fourth quarter collapse, but I kind of just had a feeling that the Jags were going to, at some point, come apart because of that overtime win in Las Vegas last week. They're back on the road against a division opponent. I was kind of shocked that they had raced out to that 29-10 lead against that Texans defense, which really came on strong in the fourth quarter, won them the game. So Cohen gets a B because the offense isn't really where I expected it to be, whether that's Trevor Lawrence's development, the chemistry with the receivers. How many times have we talked about Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter not getting there? They have to bring in Jacoby Myers. They lost Brenton Strange, the tight end. That seems to throw off the entire offense. Nothing really going in the run game with Travis Etienne either. And that was a real key to Cohen's success as the Bucs OC last season, I thought. But Cohen gets a B. I think that That's fair enough.
I'm going to give him a C plus, and I'm going to give him a C plus because the offense just hasn't been there, right? And when you're hiring a Liam Cohen, you're hiring him because you want to get the most out of a guy who was a generational talent, right? Maybe that's unfair to him because maybe Trevor Lawrence isn't what we thought he was coming out of Clemson, right? Like, but listen, when you got the defense playing as well as it did through the first, 10 weeks of the season, 9 weeks of the season, you obviously have the collapse in week 10. It's ugly, but like that's something to praise, right? These guys are taking the ball away every other possession, it felt like, and they have the big Monday night statement victory against the Chiefs, which was, that opened a lot of eyes. Like Cohen's the real deal, but when you're hiring a Liam Cohen, you're hiring him really to get the most out of your franchise quarterback. I think like that you're hiring him because you saw what he did with Baker Mayfield last year. So I just want to give him a C plus. I still think there's a little bit more to be had there, but maybe this is more of an indictment on Trevor Lawrence at this point. Boom. Like again, when you're a guy who's labeled a generational talent and you can't figure it out, like despite the different iterations of offense you've had, say what you want about Doug Peterson. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. It didn't work out. I mean, the Urban Meyer situation was everybody knew how that was going to end up. So we'll see, but C plus I think is about right. We'll see how they end the season. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. But to this point, I think there's just a little bit more that can be had. So we'll see. All right, boom. Let's head down to Dallas and Brian Schottenheimer. Again, another coaching candidate that ended up with a job that a lot of people were laughing, memeing, criticizing, ridiculing, all the other descriptive words you want to use. Jerry Jones decides to settle on Brian Schottenheimer for the sake of continuity, right? And to be fair, that offense has looked very good. But what do you give Brian Schottenheimer so far? How do you grade him out?
Yeah, he gets a B minus just because of how that offense looked over the first half of the season. Hasn't been too pretty actually in the last couple weeks. So like I have some question marks there all of a sudden, but for a while there, Dak was playing some of the best ball of his career. Schottenheimer deserves credit for that. My issue with like NFL coaching these days, actually, it's really just like NFL operations, is that we hire a head coach and he's in charge of 50% of the team. If you're counting offense and defense and not special teams or all the other things that go to be a head coach, right? So like, what's the point then? Like, like how are we justifying any of these titles, any of how we go about expectations in this way? Like, yeah, he's in charge of the offense, but like the defense is the reason why this team is not going to make the playoffs, right? The defense is the reason why the Jets are going to get an awesome draft pick in 2026 because it's going to be it's going to be the Cowboys pick and not the Packers pick. So like, yeah, Schottenheimer gets a B minus, but like probably could be worse if we were really like grading him out on the defense, which we know isn't his thing.
Right. Boom. There's a few things here. Number one, I agree with you 1,000% on NFL head coaches getting hired because singularly focused on what we expect out of them, right? Like we just talked about Liam Cohen and the Jaguars, and you're hiring him largely because of what you think he can get out of Trevor Lawrence. You look at Brian Dable getting hired all those years ago because you're looking at what he could potentially get out of Daniel Jones or any quarterback, right? A lot of these coaches feels like they're being hired, to your point, because there's a specific area of focus that a team needs rather than being the head ball coach of the entire team. It's because, we want the most out of the offense, or we want the most out of the quarterback, or we want most out of the skill positions or the defense, right? It's not about being a holistic leader, it feels like. So Brian Schottenheimer's hiring felt a lot like that to me, and like, Dak is happy because Dak likes this offense and this offense works for him. But what about the rest of the team, right? And that's where the other part of this conversation, it falls on Jerry Jones, right? And the roster that he built, especially on defense. Listen, how many times do we have to say it on this podcast? Trading away Michael Parsons was a bad decision, right? And then might have been, yeah. don't think that's a stretch to say at this point, right? And then deciding that you need to trade more picks during the season and, maybe a little bit of an overpay to try and shore up the middle of that defense and looking for edge rushers around the trade deadline. Like that's a Jerry Jones problem more than a Schottenheimer problem, I think. But again, let's give him a B minus. The offense has looked great so far in the season. For the most part, Dak has looked comfortable, but you gotta be a head coach of the entire team, not just the quarterback or the offense. So think that's where the shortcomings lie. All right, boom. Last but not least, Aaron Glenn, right? Like, who wants to fly with them Jets? This guy gets me hyped up after wins, and have a whole 2 of them now, and 2 in a row. So that's, a crumb is as good as a feast around here. So what do we think of the job Aaron Glenn has done so far this season? I know I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm curious yours.
I want you to go first. I want to hear what you have to say.
All right. So I think the biggest thing here, Boom, is you're looking for incremental improvement, right? So the offense looked the defense looked terrible to start the season. Everybody wanted Steve Wilkes fired. Brandon Stevens looked like a massive disappointment. They couldn't get the pass rush going. Teams were just scoring points at will on the defense in the first 4 weeks. The last 3 or 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, they've looked pretty solid, right? They've looked pretty solid. I know they gave up 20 points to a Dylan Gabriel led team, but all things considered, they come out, they rush the passer, they look pretty good. Brandon Stevens has completely turned it around. The offense is still lots of question marks, but I think that's more to do with the personnel than it does with Aaron Glenn. Ultimately, I think Justin Fields is not very good. They're severely lacking in skill position talent, especially at wide receiver. Brees Hall's pretty good. So I'm going to give Aaron Glenn a C+ here, because I really think that the wheels were falling off, but it's clear that these guys still want to play for him. We'll see where he finishes the rest of the season, but I've seen a lot of improvement from where we were the first 2 weeks.
Heck yeah, dude. I had a C, and I was going to be like, you know what? No, I'm bumping it up to a C+. And yeah, C+ as well from me because of that improvement, right? I also, I'm grading on a curve because, what is he working with, right? Especially on the offensive side of the ball, especially at the quarterback position, right? Like, Justin Fields is not completing passes down the field like he was in week 1. Garrett Wilson's injured. Brees Hall wants out, and you hear the Jets are winning ball games. And 20 points in 2025 when offenses sneeze and wind up with 3 points on a possession, that's giving up 10 points in 2008. You know what I mean? I feel like that's still a pretty solid defensive performance in this day and age. So that's where Glenn's going to have to make his bones as the head coach of the Jets. C+.
All right, Boom. Last segment. Let's go streaking. I mean, maybe not me and you.
Down the quad, through the gymnasium.
Let's talk about some teams that are running some hot and cold streaks. Boom. Entering week 11, it looks like there's a lot of teams that have an opportunity to break a streak, end a streak, good streaks, bad streaks. But let's start here. Thursday Night Football, Patriots, Jets. We talked about Aaron Glenn. Big deal for this team to try and exercise those demons. Patriots riding a 7-game winning streak on the arm of Drake May and Mike Vrabel's coaching. What do you think? Streak ends on Thursday?
No, streak goes on Thursday. I'll be there, but it's going to be closer than we think. Jets keep it close. It's been a TNF theme all year.
Yeah, totally fair. I mean, again, with the way that the defense has played recently, I don't think that's totally out of the realm of possibility. All right. Ravens at Browns. Ravens enter this week, 3-game winning streak. Lamar Jackson back, and AFC North is still kind of up for grabs, looking a little bit closer with the Steelers losing on Sunday Night Football. What do you think?
Your AFC North champion, Baltimore Ravens. Whoa, that would be crazy. But yeah, the Ravens will be winning the North. I'm making the declaration today. They might not lose until New Year's.
Wow. Woof. I love that, Boom. All right. Broncos, another team on a 7-game winning streak. Kind of fraudulent. I don't know. We'll see. They're playing the Chiefs at home this weekend. Big matchup for Bo Nix, Sean Payton, and co. What do we think?
Yeah, they kind of got exposed on national TV. Still came away with a win last Thursday night. That defense, man, might not let them really be exposed again, though, especially against the Chiefs. It's weird to say about a Sean Payton coach team after his defense and special teams let him and Drew Brees down so many times in New Orleans over the years. Kind of the antithesis of how I think he kind of wants to run things. But yeah, I think the Chiefs get it done. Let's snap that 7-game win streak out there in Denver, just so that way I can feel like I'm a sane person and actually understand football. That would be good.
Man, it's so weird, Boom, to look at the AFC West and see the Chiefs not at the top at this point in the season. Like, they're third in the division at this point, which is, again, it's kind of crazy. Like, long way from it being over, but they're going to need this win. They desperately need this. It's not I won't say it's a must win, but they need this win this weekend. So we'll see. All right. NFC South. Falcons, Panthers. Falcons have a 4-game losing streak. They lose in Berlin. Heartbreaker, overtime to Daniel Jones and the Colts on Sunday in Week 10. Feisty Panthers, your Carolina Panthers, Boom. What do you think?
Yeah, the Falcons with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, probably two of the premier skill position players in this league, and they play like it week in, week out, honestly. It's not like these guys are going missing or anything. Like, they produce. They have a pass defense that is among the league's best, like with a pass rush and a secondary, like marrying those two things together. Like, this is not a team that should be losing 4 or 5 games in a row. So I'm going to say that they snap the streak, even if it is against my Panthers. Oh, man, what's going on there, Carolina? I knew that they were in trouble against the Saints last week. I just had a bad feeling. So this one, it'll be close, but I think Atlanta gets it done because, again, like 5 games in a row in the L column, I don't know.
Yeah. The thing about the Falcons, to your point, you're spot on with everything you just said, Boom. It's the play calling is weird, and I feel like sometimes play calling is just like a dog whistle for people. Like, it doesn't actually mean anything. You just say it, and like you don't actually know what you're talking about. But Bijan Robinson only had like 2 carries in the third quarter against the Colts, when you need to be riding this dude. On the opposite end, Colts discover they just can keep running Jonathan Taylor, right? Like, and that should be the recipe for success. It just, Bijan Robinson, there was a sequence where he had 3 carries. He had a 7-yard carry, an 8-yard carry, and a 3-yard carry. For, 3 carries for 18 yards, and then they just completely forgot he existed and didn't give him the ball. So just strange. To your point, I think they're going to get out of the L column this weekend, but it's just very inconsistent. It's very strange to see the offensive play calling, especially with a guy like Bijan, who's, when he's right, he's hot. He's running for 200 yards. He's a good back. So we'll see if they can end it this weekend.
Give me to the end of the week. I'll be taking the Panthers.
Your Panthers. Your Panthers.
Keep pounding.
All right, Boom. Last but not least, NFC West battle, critical matchup. The Seahawks and the Rams both enter this weekend on 4-game winning streaks. I love the Rams. The Rams are my Super Bowl pick this year. Matthew Stafford playing like an MVP, but Seattle can't be discounted with the way that they've played this year, especially that connection between Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So what do you think? Whose streak is coming to an end this weekend?
Yeah, if it weren't for the aforementioned Jonathan Taylor, I'd have JSN squarely at first place in the Offensive Player of the Year award, because that guy's playing out of his mind right now. I still think the Rams get it done. They should be undefeated. I'm going to come on here every week and keep saying that until they actually lose a game that they should lose. So yeah, Rams get it done. They're at home. Should be the game of the week, right? Like, let's have a great one out there.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I love the Rams. I just think they have it all right now. Quarterback playing at an elite level, really, really good and young ascending defense. Playmakers are plenty around the offense. A head coach who's probably the best, among the best, top 3, you'd say, in football, probably. Yeah, I love the Rams in the spot, and I like them to go all the way this year. So we'll see whose 4-game winning streak comes to an end week 11.
Yeah, I'm definitely mad at myself for buying into the Stafford back injury propaganda that came out during training camp right as I was making my preseason Super Bowl playoff predictions and all that stuff. I should have seen through that. That's on me. But making me look bad right now, Rams. And honestly, though, that they're a fun team. You want those teams that are elite to go out there, ball out every single week, because that's the product we want to see as fans.